I'd like to show you a little something that I discovered the other day, which is this command called cats. So cats is kind of a super version of cat in the same way that SCP is like a super version of CP. So let's dive right in. Let's see what this is about. So anyone who's used the Unix shell knows about cat, probably. Cat lets you take a look at a file. Great. Works great if it's a simple text file. I can just see it. But then I have to scroll to see the top, so I usually pipe it to more or less, and then I can page through it. It becomes a little bit more user-friendly. Okay, so what does cats bring to the table that cat doesn't? So first let's install it. I usually install it using Homebrew. I kind of recommend Homebrew. Homebrew works pretty well. It works on Mac OS and Linux, and it's pretty easy to install the latest version of things, and you can work independently of the native OS packaging system, or if there's no native OS packaging system, then it works like one on top. So I'm not going to cover how to install Homebrew on this video, but if you go to the Homebrew website, it's straightforward enough to install. So let's install cats, but first, before we do that, cats is brought to you by the supertxt team. So there's a Homebrew tab on the supertxt website that we're going to install first. That gives us access to the software. Now that I have the tab installed, I can install the catalog of software available from the supertxt website. Including cats. Okay, let's take cats for a spin. So how does this work? So the main arguments are a path, which is a file we want to read. So let's take a quick look at this file that we looked at earlier. And works just like cat, pretty much, in this case at least. But I didn't have to pipe it to more or less. It used the pager, which is kind of nice. I can scroll up and down. Let's look at some of this interesting ASCII art. So yeah, it automatically pages for me, which is kind of nice. Now, I don't know how many of you have done this, but I've done this a few times in the past. Let's say I happen to use cat to open up an image or some non-text file. You get a whole bunch of weird stuff that ends up in the prompt in the terminal on standard out, which is just the binary guck of the file. Let's see what happens if we try this with cats. So it actually gives us an ASCII art representation of the image that I wanted to see in the first place. So that's kind of neat. So I can roughly view images using cats, whereas with cat I couldn't do that kind of thing. So this is built-in behavior with cats. You can view JPEGs and PNGs, I think, right at the terminal. Now, another interesting feature of cats is you can look at a Git repo. That doesn't work because, can't read the directory directly. But if I put supertxt file extension at the end of a Git repo, like this, it actually gives me a summary of the Git repo. So including, last modified, here's how I clone it, what branch is it currently on, what's the status, and then some recent history in the log. And it helpfully, if there's a readme.md, it helpfully dumps out the readme.md here so I can do a quick read of what's happening with that repo. So that's kind of neat. So back to what I was saying earlier about cats being a little bit like SCP. It's like an enhanced version of CP. Cats is like an enhanced version of cat. So SCP, a lot of people know that one because it works over SSH. So you can SSH to other machines and copy files using a command that's a lot like CP, but with a little bit of an extra syntax. So let's give that a try here. So what if I wanted to look at a file on one of my other servers in my house here? See, it transparently shows me the file that I asked for over the network. And it pages it for me kind of nicely, which I think is pretty cool. Yeah, so it works kind of transparently over SSH like that. Now in this case, Office Mac, I did the SSH copy ID trick so that the other machine trusts my public key, my SSH public key, so it didn't require any passwords or anything. So it just works seamlessly. But if it had to prompt me, of course, I would type in my password and it would work the same kind of way. Again, much like SCP or other SSH LA tools out there that work sort of transparently over SSH, but you just have to put in the host name before the path so it knows which server to connect to. So it turns out that there's at least one website on the internet where you can use cats to view files that are on that internet site, and that would be the supertxt website itself. So same kind of idea, I can browse the files and the intros on the supertxt website. Same kind of idea if I wanted to look at, let's say, the allowed signers. As you can see above there's an allowed signers file. And so there you go, there's the public key of the supertxt team. So yeah, it works on local files, it works on files over SSH, it even works on website or on internet sites if they support the SSH protocol like this. So it's pretty nifty. All right, so what I discovered about cats, which I think is kind of cool, is it's actually extensible. It has a kind of a plugin mechanism in it. And the plugin mechanism allows you to do automatic conversions between one file format and another. And I'm going to show you an example. So if I go in cats, let's say a Go source code file, you'll see that it's nicely syntax highlighted here. So cats actually didn't do this for me. This is something I set up in my environment. And the way that cats worked with this is it knew based on the file extension that there might be a command that can convert this representation into something else. Now, one of those representations is ASCII or ANSI, depending on how you view it. So what I did is I brew installed this fancy program called Chroma, which is a syntax highlighting tool that works with multiple languages. All these languages. And so what I did to make that Go program show up in a syntax highlighted way in my terminal was I followed the convention of having a program on my path that goes from the .go file extension to ASCII or ANSI. So I created a script called go to a, and I put it on my path. So let's have a quick look at what I did here. So you can see here I have the bin directory that is also in my path, and I have this go to a, which is just a simple shell script. So bin sh, and it just runs chroma on the path, and the only thing it does extra here is chroma will accept from standard in, and it will auto detect what programming language it is, which is actually kind of awesome. But I just specified the style that I wanted, like the certain type of syntax highlighting that I would like on my terminal. So Chroma has a bunch of different styles that are all listed out here that you can try out. So just having this go to a program on my path meant that when I used cats to view this file, it knew to run that program in my path and do this conversion. Same approach works for any file that you want to convert. So it just turns out that if you go to a file, you cats it, and you give it a different file extension, cats will use the same kind of mechanism to say, hey, can I convert main.go into main.foobar? And the way that I do that is by looking to see if on my path there's a command that will go, that's named go to foobar. And if that exists, it will run it and it will do the conversion, whatever that command happens to do. So it's a pretty extensible system. It means that you can have all these on-the-fly transformations with cats, which is kind of cool. It reminds me a little bit of, on the web of content negotiation using the accept header, but except for command lines, which is really interesting. I find this super interesting. All right, so yeah, cats is part of the supertxt suite of tools. There are others. One other one I wanted to show you really quickly is what if I were to use the same cats commands but in the browsing shell? How would that look? So let's install the browsing shell. See what it looks like. Yeah, I'm just installing it from the existing supertxt tab, which has all the different supertxt commands. And let's just see what this looks like. So for example, so it works just the same way as it did on the command line, but of course, because the browsing shell has full graphical capabilities, it just displayed the image. Now, the browsing shell has special support for supertext files, so let's take a look at that Git repo that we were looking at earlier. So yeah, it's the same summary that we just saw a moment ago, but this time it's actually rendered in a graphical fashion because the shell that runs cats is capable of rendering it in a more rich fashion, including some nice things like indentations and different font sizes, and the table here of the different Git hashes and the dates. You can do simple things like sort it different ways, different columns. Got other facilities here as well. So yeah, the cats command, it does a whole bunch of really interesting things on the terminal, and it also integrates well with other tools like the browsing shell to do more powerful things. But it's a really great example of the one tool doing one thing but working well with other tools philosophy, which I think is super interesting. All right, well, thank you very much for watching my video. This was a brief tour of cats, and I hope you find it useful. Thank you very much.